All right, and for those who are joining us, we have just given folks a minute or so to get in the room and get settled. We'll get started here, and thank you all for joining us. All right. Well, good morning, and welcome to the fourth installment of our rulemaking meeting series. I'm Ariel Finney, the Washington Cares Fund Policy and Rules Manager. I'm here today with Maria Mangaro, the Washington Cares Fund Eligibility Program Manager. We're part of the Department of Social and Health Services Washington Cares Fund team working on rulemaking for a new chapter of Washington Administrative Code. Each meeting, we are focusing on specific topics related to rulemaking. Today, we'll be focusing on the beneficiary experience for applying for services and eligibility criteria. We will only be addressing rulemaking for the Department of Social and Health Services. Employment Security Department is also doing rulemaking, so please reach out to Employment Security Department if you're interested in their rulemaking activities. Our agenda for today is up on your screen. We will start with a few housekeeping items and move into a brief presentation by Maria regarding eligibility and applying for services. We'll use the information shared by Maria to set the foundation of our discussion for today. The session is scheduled for 2 hours. We've consistently ran closer to 1 hour per session, and I expect we'll wrap up earlier than scheduled. But we will have plenty of time to work through our discussion points, to share information, hear your ideas, and I'm very excited to talk about eligibility criteria and applying for services today. So let's go over some housekeeping items. Please use the Q&A feature when we're doing our presentation. It'll be available for questions throughout the presentation today. We will do our best to address questions as we go, but please be patient if your question is not answered live. Chat will be disabled during the presentation, but it will become open as we begin our discussion prompts. There will also be a recording of this webinar available, as well as the slide deck on the website listed up on the screen. I will also share this link in the chat at the end of the presentation. Our next meeting is going to be May 8th from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. to discuss assessment and functional eligibility criteria. So today we're going to be talking about the general eligibility criteria and applying for services. In our next meeting, we'll get into that assessment piece. So please stay tuned for that. Our purpose today is to hear ideas from you all about rulemaking. We are just beginning our initial drafts of rules and want to hear the values of our community so we can integrate that feedback into our drafts. Our focus today is on rulemaking and hearing your ideas and recommendations. In order to remain focused on the purpose of our meeting, we will not be addressing any program-related questions. If you have questions about the WCARES Fund program, you can email wcares@dshs.wa.gov, and our customer care team members will assist in answering your questions. We often use terms that may not be familiar to everyone, so I'm going to spend a few minutes here just chatting about those terms. I'll also do my best to explain any as we go. It sometimes sneaks into our language here, but if you're joining us for the first time, we'll go over a few common terms you'll hear us say along the way, and not only in this meeting, but other meetings that may come up. The Department of Social and Health Services is the lead on the Washington Cares Fund project. This meeting series is focused on the work being done with the Department of Social and Health Services. You will commonly hear the Department of Social and Health Services referred to as DSHS. Employment Security Department also has a major role in this project. Employment Security Department is leading the work on employee contributions. You will commonly hear Employment Security Department referred to as ESD. Healthcare Authority is the third department responsible for a major part of the Washington Cares Fund program. They are responsible for the payment system, verifying use of benefits, and establishing criteria for payment of benefits to providers. You will commonly hear the Healthcare Authority referred to as HCA. Long-term services and supports, or LTSS, refers to a variety of services and resources to assist people who experience a long-term disability to maintain their safety and comfort. The Revised Code of Washington, or RCW, refers to our statute, or the language enacted by the legislature. These are the laws that provide program direction, limitations, and grant permission to state agencies for rulemaking. You've already heard me use the term Washington Cares Fund. We often frequently say WA Cares Fund. You may see Washington Cares Fund or WA Cares Fund referenced as WCF. Washington Administrative Code, or WAC, are rules developed by government agencies to implement policies and procedures as delegated by the legislature. You may also hear WACs referred to as rules or regulations. When I refer to rulemaking, it's regarding developing or amending Washington Administrative Code, or WAC. Next, I'm going to be turning it over to my team member here, Maria, to talk about eligibility and applying for services.
Thank you, Ariel. Today, we are going to be discussing the eligibility components for WA Cares. We'll be reviewing definitions in the RCW, activities of daily living, and the 90-day forward certification of need. First, we will go over 50B04010, which are definitions in the RCW. It defines qualified individual as an individual who meets the duration of payment requirements as established in this chapter. And it defines eligible beneficiary as a qualified individual who is age 18 or older, residing in the state of Washington, has been determined to meet the minimum level of assistance with activities of daily living necessary to receive benefits through the trust program, as established in this chapter, and has not exhausted the lifetime limit of benefit units. Here, I want to highlight has been determined to meet the minimum level of assistance with activities of daily living, which we will discuss shortly. Next, we will talk about 50B04060. This section reads that, except for qualified individuals residing outside of Washington as provided in A2 of this subsection, beginning July 1st, 2026, a qualified individual may become an eligible beneficiary by filing an application with the Department of Social and Health Services and undergoing an eligibility determination, which includes an evaluation that the individual requires assistance with at least 3 activities of daily living. I want to highlight again, requiring assistance with at least 3 activities of daily living. We'll be going over activities of daily living in the next slide. Activities of daily living, also known as ADLs, are related to personal care, such as bathing or showering, getting in and out of bed or a chair, using the toilet and eating. The 7 ADLs for WA Cares are mobility, bed mobility, transferring, eating, medication management, toileting, and bathing. I will provide some short examples for each activity of daily living. An example of assistance with mobility could include assisting someone walk from room to room, or assisting them to walk outside, helping someone with the use of their assistive equipment, such as if a person uses a walker in their living environment, but they need more help when they're out in the community. A person may become fatigued and short of breath when walking longer distances while out in the community and requires assistance, such as someone walking next to them or even pushing them in a wheelchair. Assistance with bed mobility could be helping someone reposition from lying down or from side to side. And transferring can include assisting someone move from a bed or a chair or from a wheelchair to a standing position. But it does not include assisting someone move to and from the bath or a shower or from a toilet. Assistance with eating can include sitting next to someone if they're at risk of choking, or physically assisting them with their food and or drink intake, whether that's by mouth or through a feeding tube. This could look like placing food on a fork or spoon, getting the food from the plate to their mouth, or even assisting to open containers or packets. An example of assistance with medication can include helping someone take their medication, such as placing the medication directly in the person's hand or prompting them to take their medication, like reminding them to take their medicated eye drops. Supplements and over-the-counter medicines are also included. An example of toileting could include helping someone use the toilet, a bedpan or commode, assisting someone to get on and off the toilet, helping to cleanse or helping to change any pads, and even assisting with catheter or ostomy. It could also include helping someone unzip or unbutton their clothing so that they could use the toilet. And an example of bathing could be helping a person get in and out of a tub or shower, helping a person wash part of their body or their whole body, or reminders to bathe or shower. It could also look like putting in a shower chair or a bench so that a person can be able to wash their body. And at Walk Cares, we also understand that not only functional limitations can affect a person's ADLs, but also cognitive limitations. Cognitive impairment can absolutely affect if and how someone completes their ADLs. Eligibility criteria will be developed to ensure that cognitive impairment is addressed in the functional eligibility criteria for Walk Cares, such as including supervision, cueing, or reminders to complete an activity of daily living due to cognitive impairment. And I also want to mention that Walk Cares relies on a functional eligibility threshold that is similar to Medicaid's nursing facility level of care standards, also known as NIFLOC. So individuals who typically meet functional eligibility for NIFLOC should also be eligible for Walk Cares. This is the standard that is used in residential and home and community-based care. While we are not addressing portability in this discussion, I wanted to share this section of the RCW to help highlight the 90-day language. For a qualified individual residing outside of Washington, beginning January 1st, 2030, the out-of-state qualified individual may become an eligible beneficiary by filing an application with the Department of Social and Health Services and undergoing an eligibility determination. The eligibility determination must include an evaluation that the individual either A, is unable to perform without substantial assistance from another individual at least 2 of the following activities of daily living for a period of at least 90 days due to a loss of functional capacity: eating, toileting, transferring, bathing, dressing, or continence. Or B, requires substantial supervision to protect such individual from threats to health and safety due to severe cognitive impairments. We will address the 90-day language in the next slide, and part of our questions for today will be around the 90-day as well. The 90-day forward certification of need finds that an applicant requires assistance with 3 out of 7 activities of daily living for a minimum of 90 days due to a loss of functional or cognitive ability. The 90-day forward certification of need came as a recommendation from the Long-Term Services and Supports Trust Commission, which oversees the Walk Cares program. The commission recommended Walk Cares to adopt a Medicaid-style benefit threshold, which aligns with Washington State's Medicaid standard, as well as to incorporate a 90-day forward certification of need. It is not an elimination period, where you would have to wait and pay out of pocket for benefits for that period of time. The 90-day forward certification of need is a standard practice that is used in the private long-term care industry. It aligns with the chronically ill eligibility standard for private long-term care insurance, being unable to perform at least 2 out of 6 activities of daily living for at least 90 days, for for a period of at least 90 days. This recommendation was made to help protect WellCare's benefits for long-term care needs and not to replace other programs such as paid family medical leave or health insurance to cover acute care needs. Lastly, I want to go over 50B04060 that reads, the Department of Social and Health Services must engage sufficient qualified assessor capacity, including via contract, so that the determination may be made within 45 days from receipt of a request by a beneficiary to use a benefit. I want to highlight the language, the determination may be made within 45 days from receipt of a request. This means that a person must first go through the Employment Security Department for a contribution determination. If they are determined as a qualified individual, then they may submit a request for WellCare's fund to the Department of Social and Health Services. DSHS may provide a benefit determination of eligible beneficiary or not eligible within 45 days from the receipt of a request. Now I'll pass it.
Thank you so much, Maria. All right, we are hitting our discussion part here. I am going to be opening the chat for everyone. So my hope is that this is an interactive experience, and really we're here today to hear your ideas, to generate thoughts from the community we have here. So my hope is that as we ask the questions, you can engage in the chat. You're also welcome to unmute, and to do so, please just raise your hand. I will unmute you. You'll have an opportunity to speak. I do ask that folks monitor their time, generally to about 2 minutes if you're unmuting, just to make sure we have opportunity to hear from everybody and get the input that we need. So you have the option to chat, raise your hand. We also have the Q&A feature open as well if you want to use that. But our hope is, again, to generate ideas from you all as community members, as members of various different organizations. We're very excited to hear your feedback. All right, our first prompt for you all is up on the screen. It starts with, what do you think is important to keep in mind when drafting rules on applying for services and eligibility criteria? A second question within that is, what accessibility and equity considerations come to mind regarding rules for applying for services and eligibility criteria? So again, you can use the chat. You can also raise your hand, and the questions are up here on the screen. All right, and I haven't seen anything come in yet, and I don't see any hands raised, but I am very curious to hear from you, and please feel free to share ideas. I know that this is something that's very important to me, especially as we talk about accessibility and equity considerations when it comes to application or applying for services and eligibility criteria, but also just generally, what can we keep in mind? What's important from your perspective when it comes to drafting rules for the WellCare's Fund program regarding applying for services and eligibility criteria, and again, as it relates to the Department of Social and Health Services. All right, I see a hand come up and then go down. So if you're interested, just raise your hand and I will unmute you, or you can put it in the chat. All right, Cole, I'm going to allow you to unmute.
Hi, this is Cole Kaplan. I work with Snohomish County. The item I want to share is as close alignment to Medicaid contracting as possible. Our ideal scenario is where a lot of these service provisions kind of mirror what we're already doing. So this may be more of a community forum, but I'm filling in for one of our staff. So I wanted to share that feedback. As much alignment as possible with the large bulk of work we're already doing will help with kind of transitioning and providing services.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Cole. Would you mind sharing kind of what programs you're representing here, just so we can take note of that?
Snohomish County Long-Term Care and Aging, so our DSHS and Medicaid funded services, as well as our Older Americans Act services and our Family Caregiver Support services.
Wonderful. All right, thank you so much for that. And certainly we'll note that. I think that is certainly a common theme we've been hearing. Thank you. All right. All right, and I see a comment here regarding the timeline for 45 days, and that is something we're going to be asking about here, and something we want to be mindful of as well, is just how can we do our best to navigate that, knowing 45 days is the maximum. What else can we, I've been thinking about triaging. How can we get services to the folks that need them as soon as possible, while also not, having people jump in line either, because everybody needs to have access to services. I see another comment here regarding language access is critical. The ability to get assistance with the application in your language, use of interpreters for assessment if assessor doesn't speak the same language. Thanks for sharing that, Kim. Or sorry, I read your last name, but thanks for sharing that, Lynn. All right, what else? All right, well, I'll give folks just a few more seconds to wrap up anything they're putting in chat. You also have an opportunity to raise your hand and go off mute. But this is, again, something I'm very interested in. So if you're still processing the thoughts, maybe you're thinking through what would this look like, please feel free to reach out to me afterwards, and I'm happy to take any comments. And I'll probably say this multiple times as we're going through this discussion period, because it is really important to me to be hearing the input of the community as we're drafting these rules, the brand new chapter, and also brand new program. So certainly an opportunity to do things and be very intentional about our language in a way that is pretty rare. So I see another comment here coming in. To Lynn's point, also ensuring that the questions and assessment tools are culturally relevant. We have run into the challenges with direct translation in some assessment tools. Thanks for bringing that up, Maria. We will be talking about assessments too in more detail here on May 8th. So I hope you'll be able to join us again, as well as Lynn and the folks in this room, to get into that assessment piece in more detail. But I think that, really thinking through the amount of different backgrounds and different cultures that will be experiencing this program is important. So keep the assessment eligibility process simple as much as possible for beneficiaries so they can access the benefit they have paid into. Thank you, Lynn. Right, I'm going to move us on to the next question, just to let you have a chance to think about that. Our next question is regarding rulemaking for the 90-day forward certification of need. What do you think is important for WACARES to consider? This is a pretty broad question, kind of intentionally, to leave that open for you all to provide that feedback. What is important for WACARES to consider regarding that 90-day forward certification of need? So probably that it applies to non-residents, but not resident claims. All right. What else? Right. Lynn has commented simplicity. I think of variable access to doctors across the state, especially depending on insurance status. I would hate for a lack of access to primary care to be a barrier to getting help with the need. Will likely be ongoing. If assessors can make some kind of determination about ongoing need, it would be good. All right. Really thinking about the impact of the system as a whole here, and certainly the interaction with the medical industry and the challenges that that faces. So I see align WACARE's assessments and service provision with current LTSS programs, and LTSS again is long-term services and supports programs as much as possible, and limit brand new process for area agencies on aging to be or will need to implement. That it's an expectation but doesn't have to actually occur. I see some folks agreeing as well with Lynn. All right, so we see value of our group here is simplicity, making sure that we are streamlining with current processes that are already in place, trying to reduce the amount of new systems, new processes, new requirements for folks that are doing the work right now out in the field. But also I imagine for the beneficiaries who are going to be interacting potentially with multiple systems, and how can we streamline that? So maybe I'm adding my own bit there, but certainly it seems like that's a value of the group so far. All right, what else? Right, well, if you are still typing, that's okay. I'm going to put the next discussion point up on the screen so folks have an opportunity to process it and start drafting their thoughts. Our next discussion point is, what do you think is important for WACARES to consider regarding the 45 days to process the application as it relates to rulemaking? And I add that as it relates to rulemaking, knowing there's so much that happens outside of just rules. But today and in this meeting series, we're really here to talk about the rules, rulemaking, the language that goes into that. So just kind of, keeping us a little bit in scope, but, certainly thinking about how, as we draft that, what do we need to keep in mind? So while you all are thinking about that, I'm going to go back to our chat and address some comments that have come in. I see Maria has added, people will be frustrated if they feel like they're being forced to jump through hoops when they just want to get the care they feel they paid for. Prepping all system players for this, strong customer service. Absolutely. All right. Stephen has said, emphasize the rationale behind it, what WACARES is designed to pay for long-term claims, not short-term claims. All right, thank you. And yeah, that long-term claim is a key part here. And certainly we want to be respectful of other programs that are out there that address short-term claims. And then Maria, I see another comment, and this also aligns with simplicity, make it easy for folks to understand what is required and to get what they need. Absolutely. I think when I think about rules, certainly I know it's not where everybody's going to go for information. I know that, but I do think there is a lot of value in making sure that they're clear, as much as rules can be. There's just the general layout that we have to follow, but that they're clear, that they're accessible, that people can turn to them and feel like that's a resource and not another barrier to services, or not another barrier to figuring out if this program is right for me as the person applying. So I think that simplicity, making it easy for folks to understand, certainly a value that I have coming into this project. And I feel that while I won't speak for my peers, I think that's something I hear a lot in discussions. All right, and I see another comment from what I've read so far. It seems like many claims might be adjusted based solely on self-attestation. Is that your understanding, or must all claims be approved by an independent reviewer? And Stephen, could you share more about that, just regarding that, based solely on self-attestation or approved by an independent reviewer? All right, and thanks for the comment, Maria, about hearing the value. I know that's certainly something, again, I'm here today and here for these meetings to hear those values and hear what's important to the community members who'll be interacting with these rules. While my values, I think, are important, they're by no means representative of everybody. And so I'm happy today to be hearing the values of the community and being able to incorporate that into this project. So again, we have a question up on the screen. What do you think is important for WACARES to consider regarding the 45 days to process the application as it relates to rulemaking? So that 45-day period, again, that's listed as a maximum. So we can certainly operate under that. But when we think about 45 days, the beneficiary's experience, rules, what kind of stuff comes to mind for you in thinking about something like this is something we should take note of when we go about writing these rules? I see Vanessa saying, giving folks the ability to choose their own in-home care provider will be critical to ensure timely access and continuity of care. Some participants may already have relationships with a provider or want to continue that after their benefit is exhausted. Absolutely, absolutely. And certainly for folks who have, found a place that they feel safe, that they feel valued and heard with their care provider, I think being able to continue that care wherever possible is really important. I will use this as an opportunity as well to plug future meetings that we're going to be addressing providers and the provider experience. So if that's something that's important to you, please stay tuned for upcoming meetings. I'll drop a link here in the chat at the end of this to where you can find the upcoming dates and topics. But we will be talking about registration of providers. And I think that's something that's important, is how do we get providers registered so beneficiaries can use the providers that they want. One of our requirements in statute is to register providers. So how do we make sure that when a beneficiary is ready for services, that they have the provider of choice ready to go for them? So we'll be talking in more detail about that here later on, but I think that's also thinking about the beneficiary's experience going to be very important. All right, I'm going to move us on to the next discussion point. If you're still typing, that's okay. Please feel free to continue that thought and put it in the chat. And again, as a reminder, you're welcome to raise your hand and I will allow you to unmute. I'm going to change topics just a little bit. I feel like this question maybe isn't directly related, but is something that's on our minds when we think about application and eligibility. And the question here is about what barriers do you want WACARES to be aware of regarding identification verification? And we're still working through so many details here. So we're at the very early stages of kind of working through identification verification. And so with that, thinking about what would be valid identification, how can we make that consistent across the programs that are working on WACARES, such as Employment Security Department, who will also be doing identification verification. What do we need to be thinking about regarding people's experiences with that? So again, I will leave that up on the screen, let you think about it. Please feel free to raise your hand, to be unmuted, or put your response in the chat. And Maria, a question came in that I want to clarify. So I'm going to look to you as our subject matter expert here regarding when does the 45 days start? And I think we addressed that briefly in a slide, but I'm hoping that you could clarify, when does 45 days start for that process?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, the 45-day time starts as soon as someone has been determined as a qualified individual from the Employment Security Department and sends in a request or submits an application to the Department of Social and Health Services. So submitting that request for submitting that application is that request of a receipt. And that will start, the process or the scheduling of the assessment. So it's after, ESD after your contribution requirement determination and meeting qualified individual determination or pathway, and then submitting that request for services.
All right, wonderful, thank you. And how does that relate to the 90-day certification period? Like, is that, where, how do they work together?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think of the 45 days as the start point from the application of requesting services and then being able to provide a benefit determination of yes or no, you are eligible or not eligible. But the 90 days has to do with your care needs and your assistance with activities of daily living. And does your assistance with at least 3 activities of daily living, is that expected to last at least 90 days? And if they are expected to last at least 90 days, then someone would be deemed like functionally eligible for WellCare's fund benefits. And so that the way I kind of see them as kind of together, but also separate, because the 45 days really has to do with application and providing that benefit determination. And the 90 days is about your assistance with the activities of daily living and how long they're expected to last.
Wonderful. Thank you for clarifying that for us. I'm going to turn back to the chat here. I see something coming in. And again, we're working off the question that's up on the screen. What barriers do you want WellCares to be aware of regarding identification verification? And I see Anna putting in the chat, women who change names during marriage or divorce, migrants, and people without stable housing often have more difficult time providing an identity through traditional government issued ID processes. Thanks for calling that out for us. Do you have any ideas on what would be other types of IDs or other options that we should consider outside of that government issued IDs? That may represent this population or may be more accessible to the populations that you mentioned. All right, and I see kind of a follow-up from a comment earlier regarding self-attestations. Looks like there's some clarification regarding talking with a rep about your care needs, either in person or over the phone, and the rep will make the determination. Thanks for clarifying that. All right, I'm hoping to hear a little bit more. I see accepting a wider range of IDs. And again, I'm very interested to know what that would look like, given that we want to, there's potential we will be addressing this in rules. We're still kind of working through what that's going to look like. But if we put it in rule, how do we put it in a way that's going to represent the right type of rules or the right type of IDs, so we're clear, folks understand what they need to produce as a proper, form of identification, verification. What do people need to know there? But it also helps us remain consistent on our end to know what's accepted and what's not accepted. I see another comment saying, I'm wondering if there may be concern about identity theft, which could be a barrier to accessing, thinking of folks who are impacted by the pandemic, unemployment benefit theft. All right, that's a great thing to be calling out. Are there any things that come to mind as far as kind of going deeper into that topic? I'm curious if we could go just a little bit deeper, and assurances that systems are secure, etc. All right. We are working on some system development and what that looks like. I'm by no means the expert on that, so I'm going to stop there. But we are thinking about that. But I do want to hopefully peel off some layers of that topic a little bit, as well as accepting a wider range of IDs. And also always holding in mind ease of use, so we can increase accessibility and also hopefully reduce the effort that people have to put in whenever accessing services. All right, well, I'm going to move us to the next prompt, but please, again, if we can peel off any of these layers regarding identification and identity theft, like how do we balance those two things, I think will be very important. But I'll let us start marinating on our next discussion point. So this one's kind of leaving us just in that big picture. Again, I'm trying to maybe get at our values here as a group regarding what do you hope, or, well, let me start over. What do you hope you or others experience when applying for WellCare care services? And some of the things I've already heard today are ease of access, making sure that it is as simple as possible, that people are able to, really navigate into the system quickly when they need care, and also get a provider that they already maybe feel comfortable with or have a relationship. That choice of provider is an important value as well. But I'm very curious to hear more from you all. Really, again, that's what I'm excited about today, is hearing the values of the folks in the room. So while you think about that, I'm going to turn back to our chat and go back to identification. I see a comment here regarding providing a list of different types of IDs that can be accepted, not just limited to DMV IDs, IDs that don't cost money for people to access or get copies of. All right, thanks for adding that in and giving us a little bit more of an idea of where to look to. Another comment, validating identification through trusted community partners. I lost track of it. Thinking of the providers in our community, Living Connections Network, who serve immigrant refugee communities. Wonderful. All right. Thanks for bringing that up. All right. And we will be working with our partners over at Employment Security Department, who do have a lot of experience in this with paid family medical leave, and also have a fairly robust list of identification verification. So we are, beyond just the work we're doing here today, going to be looking to our partners and thinking about, what has been working in other programs. What are some lists of identification that's been accepted for other programs that are somewhat similar to us. And I see long-term services and supports has established ID requirements. WellCare's modeling these would be ideal or wonderful. And that would be another partner that we could look to see what's been working already, and really trying to bring that over to our program. All right, so back to our question here on the screen. What do you hope you or others experience when applying for WellCare services? All right. Well, I'm not seeing anything in the chat yet or any hands raised, but if you are typing, please keep typing. I am very interested to hear from each of you kind of what you hope to experience. As again, those types of things can really help feed into our drafting or in our vision here. Again, rules are generally going to be boring. They're not going to be creative writing by any means, but the values that we can pull certainly can help us understand how do we bring those into the rules? How do we create a system that supports those values? All right, I see some comments coming in. To several of the earlier questions, comments about aligning with existing systems. I see the value in alignment from a provider or administrative perspective, but want to caution that this is a different client population, so would like more flexibility than Medicaid, long-term services and supports. Wonderful. All right, that's good to hear. I see another comment. Has the appeal process been created yet? Is WellCare's co-opting a process from an existing program? Are there steps, layers? Most must beneficiaries go to court? And we are still in the very, very, very early stages of working through that topic. We do expect to be doing rulemaking on that at some point here in the future, but we have not submitted a 101 on that yet, or CR 101 packet. And I expect that will probably be coming up sometime this year. But again, we're in the very early stages of working through that, and I'm hoping to dig in a bit more as we work through all of the details around kind of setting the foundation for that beneficiary and provider process, recognizing and kind of holding in our minds that there's an appeal process that will be there as well. But we're still, again, on the very early stages of that. And I see comment from Maria regarding center needs and considerations of clients' beneficiaries. Wonderful. All right. Well, again, if you're still typing, please keep typing. But for folks who are kind of ready to move on, I'm going to put our next slide up on the screen. We are at the end of our discussion, but certainly if you are thinking about these, this discussion today, the prompts that I've had for you, and you have some ideas later today or tomorrow or next week or next month that you want to share, please feel free to continue to, to share those over to me. I'm going to put the links that are up on the slide in the chat, and so you'll be able to access that information. We have the DSHS rulemaking website here for the Law Cares Fund program. So this is where you can find information about upcoming listening sessions just like today. You can also see past recordings of meetings. So if you've missed some, but you want to kind of get caught up on the prompts that were there, have an opportunity to hear information, those are all available as well. We'll also have the slide deck and a recording of our meeting today available probably later this week. So if you want to come back and revisit this, but also if you know folks who missed the meeting today, please feel free to share that resource and folks can get caught up. I also have the Employment Security Department's website up on the screen. They are also engaging in rulemaking, and I will let them speak for their rulemaking process and what they're doing, but you can find that information here on the website. And certainly if you have questions about the Employment Security Department's role or qualified individual determinations, that's the place to turn. And then Healthcare Authority will also be doing rulemaking, and we expect that probably to be in 2025. But you are welcome to reach out to HCA or pull up their rulemaking website and follow along. For any questions regarding the WACARES program as a whole, you can email WACARES at wcares@dshs.wa.gov. I also included in the chat my email address, which is my first name and my last name, ariel.finney2@dshs.wa.gov. So if, again, you're thinking about the things we've talked about today, you have some ideas, you are welcome to email those over to me at any time, and I will continue to collect them. All right, this takes us to the end of our meeting. As I said, we're running about an hour fairly consistently. And I really want to say thank you all for participating. I think there's been some really great information shared today. Certainly, again, some things that we'll be able to take back to our rulemaking drafting and apply those concepts where we can. So thank you for participating. Thank you for being here. Again, our next meeting is going to be May 8th from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and we'll be discussing beneficiary assessments and functional eligibility requirements. We'll be getting more into that assessment piece and getting into those details. All right, and I see one more comment I'm going to call out for us. My hope for customer experience is that is a seamless and easy. Social service programs have a long history of gatekeeping and maybe making people feel less than, such as waiting in long lines at food banks during limited hours. Hoping WACARES can flip this dynamic. Wonderful. All right. Thanks so much, Maria and others for contributing. I also want to give a shout out to Maria Mangaro for being a subject matter expert for us here today. Thank you all and have a good rest of your day.